Little hillside magic going on. So who am I to argue with hillside magic? It's too good not to see. Come on, can you sit over here? Oh yeah. Split the difference. There we go. That should work. All right, get this Twitch stream going. I mean, now we're streaming and shit. All right, so we gardened the lot out here this morning together. Now we are back out after some just general life stuff. I'm just looking through. We're still at that same place. I'm looking for areas to add some of these Hemeracalis autumn minaret, which I think I just found. Right next to you. Right next to you. That's a good move. And then maybe we'll pull one more. Next to this Asclepius. I think we actually have a lot of these Hemeracalis autumn minarets. What's up, everybody? Gonna give a quick shout out. Whoop. High five. Good job, y'all. Here they are. I knew y'all were somewhere. Let's get these into the other parts of the garden. There's one over there too. Try to put these out in like some kind of organized pattern. Man, the Phlox paniculata is doing so good to start the year. Very, very happy. Happy with that Phlox paniculata doing so spectacularly well. So there's the Baptisia. There's a grass. There's the Sporobolus. I think we're good right there. Those three they're a little in a liney poo, but we'll correct. And there's actually a space where I'm standing probably that can fix that. Then yep, there we go. There's one more, so that puts us at 1, 2, 3, 4. And now let's put a 5 down, and we can actually do a 6, 7. Here's the theory on this. The human eyeball, allegedly, based upon people that study things like the human eyeball, does not like things in evens. It appreciates the aesthetic of odds. There's some kind of Da Vinci Code, Fibonacci sequence kind of talk in here, but it's a pretty true rule. So at this point, I'm not exactly in the world of trying to interrupt it. I'm gonna go a little heavier, couple of spots, just laying that out. So we've got 4 there, I put the 5th here. We probably need to do one more in that direction. And we got the plants, so let's get them. Smoke them if you got them when it comes to plants. Also, funny thing over the last 2 years, I am amazed where people put plants. I mean, don't get weird. I mean, yeah, some people probably put plants in even weirder places than I'm thinking. But mostly they're putting them in like garages, waiting to plant them, and varying horrors like that, which have never made sense to me. You know where plants have shown they have a good track record of doing well? In the ground, usually. That really feels like the place they've done their best work. Ground. A little bit of Schizocerium over there. Asclepius. Boom, right there. So that's 2 to the 3. It gives us a little bit more flow through this zone of the bed, which is nice. A little bit of weeding over here. These low weeds, low spring weeds. I can't wait till all the plants get taller right now. It'll take a lot of this pressure off. You're like, could you plants wake up faster? Because some of the weeds wake up real fast. And it almost feels like they'll outpace you. That is why this early season weeding is pretty important. When you're establishing huge garden beds like these, you do have to just give the plants that you want this head start. A little weeding helps. And weeding's not that bad. People have acted like weeding is some kind of personal affront to them. And I'm like, I don't know. It's sort of therapeutic. You get to learn a lot about plants and the way they grow if you pay attention. And trust me, I mean, I've weeded a lot. So I'm like a weed expert at this point. I probably know more about the way these weeds grow than the plants I want to grow, which we'll probably correct over the next few decades together. But it does help. Knowing the weeds even helps a little bit. Knowing what they're going to do and when they're going to bloom and what they're capable of, and you need to get out there and take a blowtorch to that weed because it's so aggressive. Hemerocallis layout. Let's see, so that's 4, that's 2. Let me grab another so we can just do 7. Just to not OCD it, but just follow some very good information that's in the universe. And I do have one more over here, which I knew where it was, which allows it to be acquired pretty easily. And that really is going to stretch the autumn minaret because it's up at the front half of this garden and it's at this position. So we should get a really strong display of this plant this year. Damn, how will this look this year? I'm trying to just in my own mind give you a prediction. I think it'll actually look pretty good by the time we get late into the year. There's a little gap in this area between a rose and what looks like, yeah, that's a Symphyotrichum. So this is a pretty good spot right there. Boom. The rose will go off, the Hemerocallis will go off too, but the Hemerocallis has that low grassy foliage that daylilies are known for, but the flower on autumn minaret is so tall, it'll just hover over top of the rose. And it's also got a lot of light that it allows, so it's not like it'll impede the rose with shade or some shit like that. So not even practical things to worry about in the slightest on that one. That's just a creative choice. If it's a big, grass, I wouldn't have put there because the grass gets too dense, it will shade out the rose, and now you've put a new plant in that you might like, but you just created a problem for an old plant that you allegedly liked. Let's see if we've got any people on the Twitch stream. I'm doing these relatively impromptu now, just for me to get some tech practice. Lala, what is up? Some people grow daffodil. Crystal, do you know I have heard tell of some of that same thing? I have heard people say that daffodils, they'll practically grow in like mesh sacks that they sell like potatoes and onions in at grocery stores. It's over there, kids. Let's get these Hemerocallis in the ground. Oh, yeah, we had this one over here too. What was my thought with this one? Anybody remember? So this is Totally Tangerine. Oh, okay, that's what it was. So it's Totally Tangerine, which is a beautiful Hemerocallis. Somebody cue the video and the photo stills of Totally Tangerine. This is a pretty good planting of it, and I think what I was looking for over here is to just put in one autumn minaret to break the monotony of Totally Tangerine and its intensity. Also, it would just be fun to see the difference between where they bloom. But as I'm looking at this area, it is pretty tight over here. What was I thinking, right here? I think I was literally considering where it is sitting. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that wasn't the worst idea. Puts the bigger plant in the foreground, which could be cool. Little baby sedum. Oh, look how cute. Oh, geez. You guys ever see a baby sedum? Oh, look at this little seedling. Look at this little guy. Look at this. Look at this. I wasn't wearing it all day, Crystal. I did take it off at one point. It got a little too warm. Look at the little guy. Little sedum. Yeah, look. Little tiny baby sedum. Just from a seedling. Cute. Powder puffy. Looks to be true to seed. This could have been a vegetative division, actually, that fell off. Oh, I think it was. So this will happen with sedums. If you've ever tried to root them, it's really simple. You just take them, put them in perlite, you're good. Maybe a little rooting hormone, if you will. If you want to be extra fancy about it. If you want to be in the rooting hormone business, I'm gonna grab y'all and just change your view. Both lifestyle-wise, but also camera angle-wise. Go this way. Little zoom up action so we can be right in the, oh, how pretty is that? Look at the little sedums. Oh, the little sedums are brilliant. Let's get into the bed now and plant. I told my daughter this afternoon that this jacket is a real example of the public school system's failings. Very few people identify that this jacket is like the Netherlands and that the Dutch country colors are like orange. People are like, what is that? People in this region of the United States think this is a University of Tennessee jacket. Little penstemon seedling over here. And I'm like, no, this is for the country, the Netherlands. They're like, where's that? Like, it's in Europe. Where's that? It's across the Atlantic Ocean. Where's that? You know, over by North Carolina and Boston and the east coast of Florida. Where are they? You know, it just keeps going, man. You're like, geez, the public school system is really letting people down. Coming at you, 4D. Knock off the soil a little. These did pretty well. I didn't take a lot of time with them when we were potting them up because I knew they were mostly for here. And in the typical fashion that I do everything in, I sacrifice my own well-being for others. And I potted these up in like the worst potting mix I made all year. I was like, just do it quickly. There's a woman named Lori yelling at me about where her plants are. So, considering that I did such a shitty job with them and knew it, and they've done so well, is a real shout out to Hemeracalis. Hemeracalis, the plant that you always know will somehow be okay. You're like, didn't we run that over and kill it with like 5 stakes and burn it and say a few witchcraft spells to stop it from coming back? Yep. Isn't it still coming back? Yep. Damn. Hemeracalis. No shit's given. All right. Let's go over here next to this. We're doing a pretty tight planting here. So you got to really be willing to go at it. We probably need to eventually find like a champion and get a sponsorship over here on Twitch. Because I have a feeling we're going to go through a lot of pants. I'm down on my knees a lot. Some people are like, you know, when you get on your knees, you're usually like begging someone. I'm like, no, I'm just planting Hemeracalis all day. Oh, I thought it was like a begging people joke. No, it's literally a I'm on my knees all day. There's other jokes too, but for now we'll stay in the PG realm of this. Or at least PG-13. So now I'm essentially just bare rooting this Hemeracalis. It just made the most sense to do it that way. You can see you've got some old roots that are just struggling a little bit with moisture. Brand new ones though, looking brilliant. So the future is looking very promising for our autumn minaret friend here. These are going to be so pretty. Last year when I saw this, I took several photos of the young plants. There weren't a lot of flowers. Planted them late, just little babies growing up. So there weren't a lot of them, but what I could see from it, I knew is just going to be perfect for this garden bed. Just tall, and they moved really well in the wind, so it looked like this golden trumpet just floating back and forth in the late summer, and we get this great light. And I really started to think about that as well. Can't step on those Baptisia stems. They're really precariously positioned near me here, but I really try to think about those things too, where the light hits things, and we have such good late daylight here, actually better than the morning light the morning light here is pretty passé. It's really good for a period in the summer. The rest of the year, it's not as great. But this afternoon light through this valley, by the way, my name is not Glenn, as I've now learned that people think. We're in a glen, and a glen is just a flat area in a valley, in a hillside range. It can be any kind of flat, small area. Glen smaller than a valley, essentially. And this area that I'm gardening in is actually even a little deeper than the valley itself. It dips even a little bit lower on my side where I'm at. So, Glen, as the name of the garden, Natchez, the Natchez Trace Bridge down the way, Glen, what we are, just seemed to make sense to me. But now, fast forward 10, 12 years later, and I'm like, oh, maybe we should have named it something where people didn't think the word Glen was my name. Which I didn't really think was going to happen. Shows you how I look at it. I'm like, people named Glen? What? Never. Gardens named Glen? Absolutely. Soil's pretty shitty over here, so I'm just taking my time, just working it through. We got a little stone. We got some roots coming off of something. Probably the Baptisia. Yeah, Baptisia roots. I see them. That's the other thing too. You can't be intimidated when you garden with perennials either. You're gonna cut roots. You're gonna have these moments. So don't be scared if that happens. I think sometimes that's the biggest challenge with gardening is just thinking it's okay. It is. I have my full support. Anything you do will probably be okay. Unless you eat some kind of toxic plant. That'll probably not be okay. But that's short of that, you're probably golden. Let's see, this one's a little bulkier, so good job. Horrible job. I mean, I'm not going to make it to the Yankees. Although it's probably very hard to throw Hemericalis footage at Yankee Stadium. Little seedling down here, germinating in the bottom of the pot. I'm bare rooting these two because it's just a little bit easier because I don't have a lot of space over here. Soil-wise, to put them in the ground near the plants they're going. So the bare rooting helps in a couple of ways. So it takes the density of this down from like this to this, so the plant can grow the way it actually would naturally, actually. Usually, as far as I know, there aren't many places in the world where plants are growing natively surrounded by peat moss, unless it's at a peat bog somewhere in the northern hemisphere. Tuck this in over here very tightly. We're just next to these Baptisia. It's gonna be an interesting little pairing. The Baptisia bloom so early here. That is one thing, and I'll eventually probably inspect the Baptisia rabbit hole a little bit. There's a lot of other people doing it at the breeding level, so I didn't feel like it was my job to go out and grow every Baptisia on earth, but I'm sure I will at some point because there's a lot of things that make the plant good, especially if you have time and let it do its thing and just have patience with it. It takes usually about, in my opinion, 3 to 4 years of a Baptisia being planted to really get it. There's a period there, I'm gonna step out real quick. There's a period with the Baptisia where they're okay. They produce stems. There's flowers on the end of the stems. They're pretty, they're impressive, but it's not like this crazy awesome plant. But then there's a period at around 5 years of age where suddenly you see some older Baptisias, and if you see them in bloom, and they're just magic. They're big, they're bold, the flowers are great. The plant foliage is cool. It almost has a bit of a eucalyptus kind of vibe to it. Aquamarine, big leaves, pretty cool. There are a lot of forms of Baptisia, Baptisia australis, there's a lot of species. But the way it's moved, now you've got all the cultivated varieties. The one that I'm gardening with right now is pink truffles. And pink truffles is really pretty, the flower, but it has been a little slow to establish. I've gotten in one other garden where it's doing a little bit better than in this one, but it's sort of surprising. Everything in this bed is doing really well. So seeing a plant just struggle a little bit more is interesting. So Baptisia, great plants, but definitely take your time. Take your time, people. Take your time. Oh, Crystal. The Broad Street Bullies, the Big E, number 88, Eric Lindros, Simone Gagne, John LeClaire, Mark Recchi, Mikhail Renberg even, Claude Giroux, recently traded from the Philadelphia Flyers. I know, I mean, Crystal, you'll just get me on Hockey Talk if you say words like Flyers. This will just become a hockey podcast. That's all that'll happen. I have actually got a chance to go to the old Philadelphia Spectrum once for a hockey game back in the 90s. A very young me. One time I got to do something sort of interesting with it. Philadelphia is such an interesting place, and the fans of any sports team in Philadelphia have earned, quite the reputation. The whole they boo Santa Claus and threw, I think, batteries at Mike Schmidt once. But what I also do appreciate about Philadelphia is the gardening culture of Philly has been way better. Obviously, Longwood being there has really helped with that. But Chanticleer and so many other gardens. And if there is a garden hub of America at the moment, it definitely would be Philadelphia. If I was going to tell people, hey, if you want to see good American gardens at scale, where would you go? It'd be Philadelphia. Easy, easy, easy. But, definitely me and what was the mascot's name? Grunger, something like that. He had a moment, the mascot for the Flyers. I can't remember. The classic orange and black. What is it? I can't remember the dude's name. Grungy, grimy, grimmy, grimace. It was something like that. I can't remember the dude's name. Let's get these in the ground. I'm just doing a bit of weeding here. I know the weeding is riveting. I know you're all like, oh my God, this weeding this guy's doing. It's top level weeding. This is professional weeding, people. I mean, I know some people are just mere amateur weeders. I am, in fact, a professional weeder. I go through these beds and just really go off on it, Oh, there we go. Thank you. Gritty, Crystal. Thank you. The Legion of Doom, Crystal. Oh, my gosh. So, Crystal, at that time of the Legion of Doom, I was actually covering hockey. The very first time the Tampa Bay Lightning ever made the Stanley Cup playoffs was against the aforementioned Philadelphia Flyers and the Legion of Doom. John LeClaire, Mikhail Renberg, and Eric Lindros. And I actually used to know, just casually by covering the hockey team, those guys pretty decently, Eric Lindros in particular. And it was funny because I covered the Lightning, but the Lightning were not that great at the time, right? It was early Lightning. They didn't have a lot of big name superstar players. The team didn't have really that kind of cachet. And the Flyers were great that year. That was the year, I think they were the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Eric Lindros, it was before the concussion problems. It was the best. So they would come in a lot because they were in the same division with the Lightning at the time, and obviously same conference. And I would cover the Flyers pretty intensely. So I'd go in the locker room, we did all the post-game stuff. A lot of fun. But that was one of the most exciting playoff games I've ever been to. It was the first game for the Lightning ever in the playoffs, so people were pretty lit for it. Sold out. It was at it's actually where the Tampa Bay Rays play baseball now. And back then, there was a 1-year period where the Lightning Had to play in a damn baseball stadium. Big ass place. They put curtains up around the outfield and different areas. They did a great job making the best out of it. But the Flyers and Eric Lindros, Lindros was a great player. Who knows what Eric Lindros would have ultimately done, and I'm sure Philadelphia Flyer fans feel the same way. If he wouldn't have gotten derailed with concussion problems, the sky really was the limit for Eric Lindros. Good hockey moment there. Legion of Doom. Johnny LeClaire, good guy too. Mikhail Renberg, a little more quiet. But Mikhail Renberg was pretty underrated, actually. You go back, watch some Mikhail Renberg. That was a good player right there. It was a good team. Never could quite figure out the goaltending side of it, though. Even went back to old Ron Hextall for a minute there at one point with the Flyers. They're like, let's bring Ron back. He was good. Brian Boucher, he had a nice run for the Flyers as a goalie there for a minute. We've just completely gone into Philadelphia Flyer hockey talk, which is fine by me. I would actually prefer Philadelphia Flyer hockey talk. There we go. People are like, what? 4D. It's mostly the sound effect that, gets me every time. Doing just the same thing. We're just bare rooting the hemorrhagicalis. Shake, 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 shake. And then we're left with this. Much easier than the big nursery form of a cylinder. Roots don't really grow in a cylinder. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. I'm dropping knowledge all day here on Twitch. I'm like, did you guys know that plant roots don't actually grow in the shape of a cylinder? Yeah, it's true. You can ask. The hemorrhagicalis foliage, dude, daylily foliage, it's not bad. People always are talking shit about daylilies. I don't know. I mean, I talk a lot of shit about boxwoods, so, it all evens out. But there's something about daylilies that should be embraced a little bit more in a gardening way. I'm going to do another one, so we're just on the back side of these daffs. And boy, the soil here, there's a couple of spots. There's a utility line that runs through here. It's our water line to the house, and I know where it's at. It's on the foreside of this bed, so I haven't put anything close to it that I know is deep or roots aggressively. I've left that area sort of intentionally to, have water come to the house. I'm told that shit's important. I mean, I don't really focus on those type things. Like, is water to your home like a necessity? I mean, I don't know. I've seen a lot of people with wells, and that seems to go okay. So you never know. But I have tried to keep this bed in a certain zone of planting because of some of those practical things. But what's encouraging is the soil here is not that great because I do know the utility line's near here. But it's improving. That's the big thing. The soil is actually getting better after just a year. And that's what you can start to notice. And that's all you can ask, really. I mean, stop. If you've ever obsessed over soil and the way it looks, that's probably a mistake. But, there's a lot of ants in that container. Oh, I'm being attacked by ants on a Twitch stream. They're just little black ants. No big deals. If they were fire ants, I'd be running out of here like a scared person. Like, the fire ants are here. And I would also like to ask the question, when are the killer bees getting here? I remember as a kid, back in like the 80s and 90s, they were always talking about killer bees. They were like, the killer honeybees are coming. They're in Texas, but they'll be here soon. I mean, I haven't heard shit about those killer bees in a minute. I mean, that stuff there was all hype. Step, 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 step. I haven't seen one. I haven't seen no killer bees. I haven't seen no murder hornets, murder wasp. I haven't seen making a murderer. I haven't seen any of that stuff out here in the garden. And if there's somebody who's gonna come across rare and unusual killer insects, it's your boy. I mean, I'm coming across whatever's out here. If there's an insect, if there's a mammal, I mean, we were having a mammal to mammal conversation with a groundhog recently. So I'm pretty assured we're okay. Pretty good with that. chat? Yes. Oh yeah, Crystal. Yeah, no, I understand. My friend has a well, and when we were up in Connecticut, I considered doing one as well. And I researched it and had a guy come out, he gave us a quote and everything. And I was like, how much does it cost to hold on? It costs how much to dig a well? What? I thought this was like living off the land and like, you know, homesteading and things like that. I mean, geez, I didn't know you had to win the lottery before you went homesteading. Shit. Which, by the way, sort of seems like the way people successfully homestead. You make a couple of mills doing something, you know, selling crypto or crack or something like that. Then you become a homesteader. That seems to be the general move, in my opinion. Yeah, Crystal, I agree. That was one of, I mean, the Flyers are in a tough zone right now. You know, they're on the rebuild. That whole Nolan Patrick thing. They drafted Nolan Patrick like 2nd overall, I think, that year. And then he had those health issues, and, you know, it just felt like that was, they had something, they thought there was going to be a transition plan between like the Claude Giroux Flyers and the younger Flyers, and it didn't happen. And then, of course, we can't go without saying the Shane Gostisbehere issues, how he came on the scene, he put up all these points, then the guy just faded off. Just happens. It happens. You know, it's tough to do these things. Oh yeah, Crystal, the guy who came out in Connecticut, I was like, okay, let's do a good well. How much is this gonna cost me? And he was like, well, about 15 to 20 grand. I'm like, 15 to 20 grand to dig a hole? And put a gravity pump? I got shovels. Pretty much. If also too, if you ever look around Natchez Glen, like we just did, and you see these walls and you see any of the work, and you say, who did that? Well, it was mostly me after figuring out how much this shit cost. And then I was like, I can do that. I could at least figure it out and do something sort of close to it. It's just ingenuity mostly. It's a poor kid who grows up. Let's go over here a little, just check out through this zone. And then we're going to be right on the other side of this is where we're gonna put those hemerocallis. So let's just walk. My gimbaling today, very good gimbaling. I'm not even sure if gimbaling is a verb or not, but we'll just pretend it is. So here's our other autumn minarets that we're gonna finish here. We've just got 3 more to go. And as this garden really wakes up, which is funny to say because there's so much green in here, but as it really wakes up moving into, I would say like June, is probably the biggest strength of this bed. All the grasses will start to show themselves, and I think that's going to be the real crescendo of this bed, is that moment. Last year, I have to remember where I was at in my mental breakdown. Hold on, was it before that woman Lori sent that email, or after that lady in Arkansas sent that email? Somewhere in between the emails, I landed on coming out here and doing the photos. And I think we were in like August probably. And August, the bed was just really lush and really rich with flowers. And I loved it, but I definitely knew we had more space, number one. And number two, we needed something to break up the flowers. There were too many flowers. And I went into load up with grasses mode. Spiralis oroides, Andropogon terranaris, or terranarius. The mother dragons one. So that side that you're on now is where a lot of that grass resides. This side, I dotted the grasses a little bit more so to sort of feather them from that side to here. And long term, what I'm really trying to do is have this bed here be flower heavy. The bed we're going to establish behind us, more grass heavy. And most of the imagery that I see happening in this bed will be from the west to the east. So we'll look through this bed to the garden over there. Well, to do this a little more artfully, I actually started thinking originally I would just have the beds be very similar to each other. And they would just be like these marriage beds that are partners in crime, but doing most of the same work. But after thinking about it for the first 5 or 6 months of the year, I've landed on doing it. There'll be plants that complement and some of the same plants that are in this bed, but I did want it to be grassier. I want it to be a little taller, and I want it to be a little grassier, which will mean like eupatoriums, maybe even a tree or two. Small size trees like a hamamelis that'll get broad, or maybe, maybe an Acer Palmatum. Shh, don't tell anybody. So that will give us that look where we go from this side of the bed and we look through to that. And it'll make it just look like one vista. You won't even see the grass path that's between them if you take photos or video, or even maybe just visually looking from this side. So I think that's going to be really fun. I've put zero effort into the grass path this year because the grass path may actually end up having times of the summer and fall where it's actually shaded slightly. And I didn't want to go put any kind of grass variety in there that I knew that might give a problem. So we'll wait a year or two. We'll establish both these beds. Then we'll talk about grass. Because I mean, quite honestly, people, who wants to talk about grass that much? It's just not that exciting, like, yard grass. That's the problem now with ornamental grasses. You bring up grasses to people and they immediately start thinking about some kind of bullshit fescue. And you're like, oh, geez. Then you have the problem of, oh, there's one of the carex. Is that in bloom? Oh, yeah, that little carex is blooming. So that one we get a positive ID on. Cool. But a lot of people see it as these grasses, they do associate sometimes. Boy, that Asclepius is right there. Oh, you're a weed. Look at this weed. Look at this little son of a bitch. This is ridiculous. They're always like, they find the nooks and crannies. I never even liked English muffins. I never even got English muffins. I was never in the English muffin club. Never quite understood that. My mom would buy them. I think they were cheap. Not sure what the vibe was with that. I don't even know who ate them, really. What do you put on an English muffin? Like butter, I guess? I mean, my parents were living the margarine life back then. That was the time where people were still told that margarine was better for you. They were like, yeah, that oil that we add hydrogen to, that's definitely better for you. Definitely better. And then everybody was like, were you guys lying about margarine being better for us? No. Hemerocallis in a pot. Hemerocallis 4D. Hemerocallis out of a pot. Oh, this is when we started using better potting mix on these. I had to switch at one point. These are better. Shake, 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 shake. And now we're down to this. So that's what I've been shaking it off into, is just loosening it, lets it fit in the planting space just a little easier, and avoids me having to dig even a bigger hole and disturb anything else over here. I really do hope one day I can convince the nursery industry to embrace bare root plants more. It'll be one of my faves. I'll know 20, 30 years from now if we've succeeded doing things here, if suddenly the nursery industry is like, we're selling a lot of bare root plants now because Steve at Natchez Glen kept talking about it for 30 years. Rolly just murked something. Rolls, what you got, bud? He's not listening. He's taking his things. Oh my God, he just murked something. Good job, Rolls. Oh, we would have. I think it was like a mouse. It looked like. Don't let Rolly fool you. Rolly's come a long way. Rolly used to not mean business. Now Rolls means business. He is straight out here assassinating things. Don't give him trouble. Yep. Rolly's like, listen, you know the old Rolly. You don't know the new Rolly. I've seen things. I've done things. New Rolly talk. Wow. Put respect on the man's name. He's out here just taking out mammals. He did think about that baby groundhog the other day. I mean, that did happen. He really did. I had a moment with him. He was stalking the baby groundhog. He was thinking about it. He was like, He was doing a size up. He was waiting for the weigh-ins. He was like, what do you weigh? He's doing the math. He's like, well, I don't know. That's pretty bulky. And, he thought the better of it. But I could see him thinking. He was trying to decide. Now, this little mouse, he was like, yeah, I got that. Also funny to watch cats whenever they hunt, because most of the time the cats I see when they hunt and they catch something, they walk with that prance that cats get. When they have some dead mammal in their mouth, cats, they're the happiest you've ever seen them. You're just like, look at that little cat go. He's so excited that he killed something, which is really horrible. It's really horrible, but it's also the most cat thing that a cat can do. So we can't judge them, but they do get pretty happy. Did you ever hear the one story about the lady in New York? She was in New York City, somewhere in one of the boroughs, and she has a bunch of cats, right, in this apartment. And the poor lady passes away, an older lady, probably just old age, etc., etc. But she's got the cats. And she was like, she kept to herself, didn't have any family. And all of a sudden, the people who live in the apartment complex, in the building, they're complaining. They're like, there's a smell coming from one of the apartments. And finally, someone goes in to the apartment, and unfortunately, they find that the lady has passed away. Well, even more unfortunate, they discover the cats, that she'd been taking care of all that time. Yeah, they started eating her. Yeah, they started eating her. Yeah, they ate the lady. Not all of her, I believe, if the story recalls. It was just particular parts of her. But, yeah. So, don't trust cats, okay, people? Don't trust cats. They're cute, they're great, they're awesome. I have cat. But, just remember, cat is a very specific thing. Cat is essentially a tiger and a lion in a small body pretending to be cute, so you'll give it food. But remember, ultimately, they're murking things. And the outdoor plant controversy sweeping the world of naturalists and ecologists continues. Every person who's ever kept an outdoor house cat should really not follow any of the people involved in botany or ecology. You'll feel like you're the worst human being on earth. You're like, I let my cat outside sometimes. And they're like, if you do, they're destroying the environment. It's a little like the fire ant thing. I mean, yes. Do they do a lot of damage? Absolutely. But I don't know. There's a lot of things in the universe for us to all be upset about. Let's at least put them in a numerical system that we can all agree upon. 4D. A little rose root over here. Got some grasses, some good looking Eryngium. And then we've got one more Hemerocallis that we're going to put right over. We got to look at some Hillside Magic. Hold on. Hillside Magic cameo coming up. Hillside Magic. Oh yeah, it's the murderous swagger for sure, Crystal. But he's like, this is murderer energy. Have you ever seen murderer energy? No, hopefully. See, that's one of the things. They always sort of show these things differently, but maybe it's not as different as people think. I don't know if the show Dexter was a very good portrayal of a serial killer. I think he was maybe a little too calm about the whole thing. Little Hillside Magic, for sure. Acer Palmatum's looking good. Beautiful end of day. The other side of the valley is really pretty too. It gets that little bit of light the end of the day. And I think I've shown this before, but we are in this true valley situation. Thank you, Crystal. It really is pretty. I mean, I do give a real shout out to my wife and I for picking a good spot of land in the world to do something. And then even more of a shout out that we decided to do something with it. Front garden, yeah, doing good. Rudbeckias, anemones. We're still waiting for these damn Eragrostis in this bed. We really need for these Eragrostis to wake up. This Eragrostis ellioti, please wake up. It was borderline to grow here. Allegedly, some of the botanisty type people say it's zone 7, and I'm technically in zone 7. Don't tell anybody, but it may have actually not made it through that cold. I mean, now, we did put like a bunch of them in there. If they all die, that'll be something. I don't think that's going to be the case. So it may just be like a real warm season grass. It might be like the warmest of the warm season grasses. Panicum virgatum is like, it's warm enough for me now. And the Eragrostis is like, oh no. I wait for it to get to be 90. Then I start growing. Which is true with some of the grasses, it feels like. Sorghastrum, which is the big Johnson grass that is so invasive here in Tennessee. It's like that. It will take its time and only really start pushing up out of the ground aggressively till about like May. It's rare that I see it here pushing heavy in April. So maybe the Eragrostis follows like a similar calendar of other warm season grasses. Hopefully not as, ridiculous as Sorghastrum. It isn't. It's a tiny little grass, but it grows mostly on like coastal Atlantic area, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, areas like that. So a little bit of a unique plant to add as a trial, but I am always down to try unique additions to the garden. Let's go back here, zoom that out a little bit. So there's where we're working. You're seeing some of the foliage stick up out of the ground of the Eryngiums and the Alliums, which do really look good. We're right by this rose to plant our next and last Hemerocallis autumn minaret, and that's going to do that once that is in the ground. Boy, the Rudbeckia maximas have really gotten good as well. That's a real revelation too. If that plant continues to do good, it'll also be a nice plant to chew up some real estate and also have very impressive late season color and texture in the garden. Little tiny weed aggressiveness in here. Gonna go. Come on, weeds. You're all going out. Come on, you too. You too. They think they're gonna live here. They're not. I mean, they are technically, but not as much as they hope. Definitely a little bit of Eryngium, Yuccafolium self-seeding in here, which, not the worst. There's other plants that self-seed that are not as attractive, so that's probably a good thing. Here's our Hemerocallis 4D. Bare root. I just bare root the plant over top of where I'm going to plant it. Shake, shake, shake. Right? Just way easier to work with this now than all of that. Now, if the plant is so like pot bound, you may never be able to do that with some nursery plants, but I know the nursery these came from. It was mine. Yeah, look at these little Eryngiums. So that's what this is, by the way. So growing right there on this soil, these are little baby Eryngium yuccafoliums that have germinated all on their own. So this plant right over by me, this Eryngium here, making little babies. It's okay. We'll break them up. We don't need that many. We're gonna replace this. Now, a few years from now, this is probably how this goes. And there's a moment of me bitching about there being so many Eryngium yuccafolium seedlings in this bed. But that is also what you will get. And then that becomes an issue of, well, okay, are these Eryngium too aggressive for in here? Are they putting too much weed pressure into the bed and squeezing out other plants? If they are, we'll do something about it. But more than likely, what will happen is they'll move. There'll be some that we let go. There'll be some that we miss. And we probably like it where they're at. And we won't weed them at all. So it'll literally become maybe weeding that's more fun. Is there such a thing? Yes, there is. It's a point where you get to decide, oh, is this that little Ellers? I think this is that little Ellers. So it's one of the Henry Ellers, and it's a very commonly grown garden plant in Europe. And this is one called Little Ellers. That's in, is it Helianthus or Rudbeckia? Forget. One of the two. Those type plants look. It's a long day, and I've been wearing this jacket so long that I'm thinking John LeClaire is an active member of the Philadelphia Flyers. All right. Boom. There's our last autumn minaret in the ground. All kinds of gorgeous to see that plant. That's one of those plants too that I think when you plant it, you should do it with some excitement, because there are plants that are cool, but then there are plants that really do something interesting. Oh, that's awesome, Abby. Glad to have you. Crystal. So let's have this conversation, Crystal. I wear a size 12 shoe. Okay, this is the shoe. My whole life, I've been a little bit like, yeah, the size 12 shoe. Cool. Now I'm a little bit like, I wish I did not wear a size 12 shoe. Could I get like a 7? I mean, is that possible? Because, yeah, this is too much. This is about the length of the shoe. It's just, it's creating a lot of problems in my life. What you eventually hope happens in these beds is the plants literally net together. The roots, the foliage, the structure, all of it almost interlocks. And at that point, this shit gets difficult to tiptoe around in and do stuff. There's been a lot of days where I've joked about don't step on plants, but we are deep in the don't step on plants game at this point. With all of these things, let's flip around here and let's take a quick stroll over what we just saw. Oh, there we go. Let's look at some GM, late day GM action. Oh, the late day GMs. Late day GMs, best GMs. Early day GMs, they're pretty good. Morning GMs, pretty sweet. But late day GMs, best GMs. Best jams. Late day jams. I've still not completely mastered the art of camera moves and talking. We'll get there. Give me a week. Flip. Or let's just go this way. Show everybody the maples are getting some nice color here as we just hit the last light of the day. Beautiful Boss Coupe Glory. Acer Palmatum. Really beautiful. The GMs really do, don't they, Abby? It's a great revelation for me too, because it's a plant that, again, a lot of people I respect have said they won't do well here in Tennessee. I had tried them in small quantities before, and they were okay. Totally Tangerine was really the only one of merit that did well for me. A lot of the older introductions from Europe, they were real trash, like Mrs. Bradshaw, and there's another one too that I always blank on the person's name. Flip. We'll get to this garden too. I always blank on the person's name who introduced it, but it's not good. The hair is just a mess today. It's just I got soil. Oh, now there's soil in the hair. Oh, geez. I mean, this is just, oh my. Yeah, see, Abby, I had always been told they would struggle in the summer. And I have not experienced that with them. I also didn't experience this with stackies either. I experienced the stackies and the GM both being really, really good here. So last year's summer was not that bad. It was, I'd say, average. The summer of 2019 here was a record-breaking summer. We had the most 90-degree days in the history of the state of Tennessee. If you're wondering, that number was 94. Yeah, that shit's right. 94 days above 90. That was when we were doing the dahlias. And this bed up here, all dahlias, that bed there, all dahlias, and these two beds that we're working in now, roses. So a lot's changed since then. The biggest thing we need to stay changed is none of this 95 days of 90. That shit was ridiculous. I was out here every day nearly, and it was just abysmal. Oh, look at Viridis. Viridis, look at you, you're so beautiful. I was talking some real trash about Montague this morning, and I'm pretty confident that we're gonna bypass Montague pretty quickly. I mean, I love Monty, and eventually we'll have him on as a guest, but I don't know. The garden is great at Longmeadow, but I do think it's not maybe as ambitious. No, Abby, so we got it last night. We did have a frost last night, but it was a very soft frost. We do have some chance tonight, but I think it's unlikely. We're supposed to be like in the 40 range, and that is right on the cusp for me if I get frost events or not. Typically, I haven't seen a lot of frost at that number, and just by the warmth of today, there's a lot, and it's not cooling down that much right now as we're like heading into dusk. So I think we're gonna be fine for this evening. But, oh shit, Abby, I was obviously, people, I mean, I say this all the time. I don't get, I guess what you would say, freaked out by the frost. But I definitely get disappointed, especially for the maples. I mean, the maples were my first love in gardening. So seeing them look great like they do right now, and then thinking there's a chance they would get hit by a frost event and not look great, the plant's fine. The plants can get hit by these frost events, and they've done it. They've been hit 6, 7, 8 times, some of these Acer Palmatums. They've been fine. I'm the one who has the problem, right? I'm the one that wants to see them do great. I'm the one who wants to look at them. I'm the one that wants to enjoy them. They're just doing their thing. You know, I'm over here hyper-focused on if Macaulay Yatsubusa, which we should go look at quickly because the light is just hitting it at the right spot, and we're going to lose it here in a sec. Oh, it's so good. Yeah, they took a little bit of damage here or there last night, Abby, but not too bad at all. Look at the size of this weed. Holy moly. We're growing big in Texas. I always wanted to move to Texas just so I could say I grow them big in Texas. I just started saying it now in Tennessee. I said it with earthworms, and then somebody talked shit about, you know, Chinese worms. I'm like, geez Louise, we're so nationalistic in our country. Macaulay Yatsubusa. If you've never seen Macaulay Yatsubusa in person, hopefully I'm doing it justice because it's just fantastic. It's one of by far the best Acer Palmatums ever. I'll take us to the other side. There's a little bird's nest up here, by the way. There's the foliage, there's really tight internodes, but there's a little bird's nest. I think we're gonna be able to see it if we look very closely. In there. There it is. I don't see any birds in it though. Or eggs rather. Or birds. Same thing. Chicken and egg. But really, really cute. Always like finding the nest of the different birds in locations that you go. We do have some very smart mockingbirds who put a nest at the very tippity top of that Picea abies pendula, which is a great location. It's about, 12, 15 feet in the air. The branches are real supportive. It's a real good decision. Those mockingbirds must have had some engineers in their family past. So there's Makawa. Makawa means like roof or shingled roof. And then Yatsubusa means dwarf. So it's essentially like little tiled roof is what it's supposed to mean. Or if you've ever seen any Japanese temples, the kind of roofing tiles that they do there, it's also supposed to have some kind of loose translation to that. But my friend Talon's wife has also rolled her eyes at this in this translation of Japanese. So I'm assuming it's probably not the best translation, but good enough. Don't step on plants. I'm trying not to step on plants. It's very impossible. So there's Makawa. Makawa's being a little bit flanked at the moment by the Hamamelis. That's Yelena. You can still see all the understock on there. We'll come through. It'll start to wake up, the understock. We'll take it off probably in the next week. Maybe tomorrow. We have very warm temperatures this week towards the end of the week, so into the 80s. So my first preference of work is going to be to continue to plant, get as many plants in the ground as we can. Then we'll start getting into a little bit more of a maintenance cycle. Last day light on these Mertensia over here was so pretty. I think we might miss it. Let's see, can we get there in time? Can we get here in time? We did. Just that last day light going through the Mertensia virginicas, just hitting them off. Really beautiful and brilliant. And you can see this ground layer is off to a pretty good and exciting start in this bed. You know, the hostas are finally coming up. There's humpback whale. Mertensia is on the other side. There's Sonia's bluebell right there in front of us. Hold on, humpback whale. I'm pulling back a leaf real quick. There's our grouping through there. There's some little Carex texensis. And there is another humpback whale right there that we're looking at. More Mertensia. And then we come up. Geranium about to go off, by the way. Big time geranium. Let's go look at those real quick, and then we could check out the Eppies, just in case Amy's on here. I gotta always say Amy now. Whenever we talk about Eppies, we always gotta talk about Amy. Beautiful Tropenberg foliage too, by the way. If I don't give a shout out here, I should be arrested for not giving appropriate shout outness. You can see that little curl in the leaf is what gave this Acer Palmatum its name and habit and why it was selected as a seedling. That little curve. And again, Tropenberg from the Tropenberg Arboretum. So let's get over to the geraniums. This is pretty fun with the gimbal. We're literally like in the garden. Like very low angle. So here is our geranium crane dance. There's the foliage on the plant. There's our foliage. There's our plant just beginning to set its flowers. Gorgeous, gorgeous plant though. Flowers are beautiful. There'll be, dozens, if not hundreds of these on this plant in the next 2 to 3 weeks. You can see all the buds coming. Great plant. More Palmonium over here. Another crane dance. Then we start getting into the grasses. We got a little gap here. The ferns have been really slow to wake up. A lot of the Dryopteris, that's fine. A lot of them are. They've just been very slow. So we have this little area that we're looking at that we still need to work on. There's that area over there that's weeds that we need to replace with the epimediums. Now that we're clear of the frost, somebody knock on wood or say some shit that sounds like, we're trying to pretend like we're not superstitious, okay? Somebody pretend like we're not superstitious. We'll put out these epimediums underneath there. And that is our Corylus avellana friend. And this, this whole time we've been standing underneath Tropenberg, by the way. I think I can do we'll flip cameras so you can see. So I am literally underneath Tropenberg, right? Like that is literally where I am right now. So to say we are underneath the canopy is an understatement. We are in the plant. So let's go look at these epimediums and we will call it an evening. Get inside, get to the next fun, exciting moment of today, which is cooking. Eppies are so good. Oh, they look like little little fairies or birds or something awesome. Whatever's awesome to you, that is what they look like. I cannot get enough of these. This domino actually rebloomed too last year. And it wasn't like crazy reblooming. It was just enough to notice. And I'm wondering, as they get older, will they do it more, right? They'll have more rhizome and vegetative material. So they might rebloom with like some energy to it, not just a onesie twosie thing, but like a whole row of them might. Let's see it. 1, 2, 3, flip. Oh. Sorry, Amy. I am so sorry with Amy. I mean, Amy was so wrong, Abby, that day that she was saying that, just so wrong. So wrong. How wrong was she? The most wrong any person's ever been about epimediums. Just so wrong about the epimediums. So wrong. Oh, that's just... That's just too much. That is just about the most spectacular thing I've seen today. And I've seen some spectacular things today. I've been in a bit of a spectacular thing mode. Lala, the Eppies are the best. They've been good cut flowers too, y'all. You got to take them at an earlier stage, but if you do, they've actually been really nice. When they fall, the little spurs, no big deal. Just clean them up. The Eppies are the best. Oh, look at the Hellies. Oh, look at the end of the Hellies even. Oh, look at that. Just so pretty. Here's Blushing Bridesmaid, doing Blushing Bridesmaid things, by the way. Oh, camera covered. Oh, look at that, right? Damn. Just the best. The combo of the Eppies and the Hellies? Yes, please, and may I have more? Yeah. And then Not to just, you know, say we were underneath Acer Palmatum Tropenberg, but we were in fact underneath Acer Palmatum Tropenberg. There's a big water feature over here, just out of our purview, where the terracottas are at, that I have to, sorry about that. Sometimes my gimbaling gets a little weird. So this is just a water feature over here. We'll get all the pots off, clean it off, get any of the weed debris out of here and fire that up probably pretty soon. And then this is the corner that we just came out of. Little hydrangea paniculata in some containers, just sitting there randomly. And all of the green-leafed Acer Pals. You know the one thing that is always funny though? There's always interesting things to see in gardens. Here's why. I'm walking around, we're looking right over here, and as I'm looking over that way, and there's a hole in the ground, and I'm trying to determine, is the hole in the ground a mole, a vole, or other? I think it's probably vole, which is not the best, because you know the voles like to eat your plants. But we'll see. We have dealt with voles before. How do we deal with voles? Aggressively. You know, aggressively. That would probably be the phrase. Poison is typically involved. Maybe we could train Rolly, now that he's adopted hunting. Is it possible that now that Rolly has adopted hunting, that we could get him to just up his game? I mean, if Rolly gets in the hunting game, he was out here murking critters a minute ago. Gotta get that guy, you know, gotta pump him up. Just be like, hey, have you ever thought about digging? You know, there's a lot of things to dig. Oh, Crystal, we're gonna get him out there. We'll bring him over there, put him by the hole. He'll smell it for 1.1 second and then walk away. That's probably what's gonna happen. I'll be like, but you, wanted to take a minute as I was going in here. This is a Rigeron, Lynn Haven's carpet. Gets a bit of a rap for being a little aggressive. I've never found it to be aggressive in the way that plants are badly aggressive. I am out here gardening a lot, so I don't normally find that experience to be that true. Then the Sensation series and the Phlox Hybrida, that's just like, oh, what kind of dog is it, Abby? I've always heard that like people say Jack Russell Terriers are good at that kind of thing, but my neighbors have Jack Russell Terriers and they just seem annoying. They just yap a lot. Doing pretty well over here also. We had done some interplanting over here. I'm just taking a quick look. Doing pretty good. Got to work just the area near the house. We've just got too many astilbe over there with nothing else. But we had that corallinum. There was an Acer Palmatum behind the Silberlock. So we lost the corallinum, too wet, too long. It never did great over there. So now we got to rework that whole zone in that back line. So we'll just diversify it. I've got some hostas on the agenda to go over there, a lot of ferns, a lot of carex. So we'll really dense it up, and we want to be able to look at it through that window, because that is the studio space right through there. So we'll always be looking out these two garden windows. So having that little cool fern corner over there where we do ferns inside, but we also do ferns outside, just sounds like maybe the coolest fun thing ever. We're definitely doing that. And we'll just keep this garden sort of moving. I walk by it every day, so it's easy for me just to make observations. It has been a bit of a challenge because we had that moment. We planted a lot of it in 2020, and that was the year that Fireglow dropped every leaf on it. So we went from being like a lightly shaded morning sun, afternoon shade exposure to suddenly we were full sun almost all day. We just had a little bit of sun relief at the end. But that change in the last year and a half definitely impacted some of what happened in 2020 in here. And hopefully now we're going to get back to a place of normalcy with the Acer Palmatum. And then some of these plants that are through here that like it to be a little bit more lightly dappled shaded, morning light, afternoon shade, will get what they want. Because they had a year there where they were not getting that. That's where we moved some hellebores and did some other things. Density in here is going to be good late season. It's good now, but looser than I'd like to see it long term. And there's a little bit of patience on my part because I did park quite a few Heuchera villosa Autumn Bride in here. And that is a really good plant to space fill. To me, it's like there's three choices in Heuchera, quite honestly, in my opinion. There's Heuchera villosa Autumn Bride, there's Heuchera villosa Bronze Wave, and there's Heuchera villosa Caramel. That's it. I'm not quite sure why we need another beautifully fall color toned Heuchera when we have Caramel, but okay. I'm down with it. I just hope someone comes out with a good one. When the next person comes out with the next good one, I'll be happy. But so far, and in the greatest small horticultural world of all time, as we look at Caramel, I did not know this, but one of my favorite plant breeder designers over in Europe, Thierry, who's based in France, I've known about his work forever. He introduced Heuchera villosa Caramel. I couldn't believe my ears or eyes when I read that he introduced Caramel from France. How did that happen? How does someone from France get a hold of Heuchera villosa that grows in America and makes the best selection of it? Like, that is just... It's interesting and brilliant, but it also does sort of raise the question, what are we doing over here? Like, what are we doing? The Europeans are kicking our ass with plants all over the place. We're taking major L's. North American Gardeners Unite or something. I mean, let's really get on this. Brilliant little plant. So there's Caramel, and then real quick at the end, because I mentioned it, it's right by us. Here is Autumn Bride. Now, I was also sent a Heuchera from a nursery that I bought that was supposed to be a really good one from a selection from a particular nursery grower, and here it is. Yeah, I mean, it's small, yes. They were planted at the same size as this. Oh, Abby. Abby, you're in luck. Hold on, Abby. Oh, Abby. Guess who's been working on it? So I found this cultivar. Again, it's from Europe. Yeah, that makes sense. It's Heuchera villosa, and it's called Royal Red. That's it. Not much of a name. It has grown really well in its plug tray. I just kept it in a plug tray all last year. It was to live here and try here. And it's done great. It's pushing with new growth. It looks really good and really clean and healthy. Let me show you the tray. Now again, you gotta be a real plants person to get this, okay? Plants persons unite, 1, 2, 3. The foliage is really red, and the vigor on it is really good. There's the full tray, covered with some leaves and such. but they actually look really good. And I know if you've never grown heucheras at this stage, maybe you can't tell, but I'm telling you, take my word for it, those look great. These are some little Tiarella cordifolias that are pushing out some flowers. Look, we made a living wall. Do you guys want to sell living walls on the internet? Just buy plug trays of Tiarella cordifolia. And then there you go, living wall. Rolls. Rolls. What'd you do with that thing you killed, bro? Abby, here's the thing. Abby, wait till you hear this. It ain't new. It's old. It's old. Namaste. It's old. I don't know. I mean, we'll eventually we're going to do the No More Plant Collection thing here in a week or two. We'll offer some stuff, but I don't know, man. What is going on in the nursery industry was pretty predictable, in my opinion. I sort of saw Red Baron. Red Baron. Oh, I'm living in Red Baron now. I saw it happening pretty quickly after the pandemic started, that you could see when that surge of people buying plants happened, that what the nursery industry was going to do was they weren't going to jump on new plants when there was that demand. You can't. In the nursery industry, most people growing plants want to grow thousands of the same one. They don't want to grow 5 of this, 5 of that, 10 of that, right? They want to grow thousands and thousands. So the plant material on rare, harder to find plants, or maybe sometimes even more interesting, there's not that much plant material. You can't go grow 5,000 of them at the beginning. You have to start with like 5, and then 5 becomes 20, and 20 becomes 40, and 40 becomes 80. But that's over the course of years and years. It could take you, in a nursery setting, to get a plant in big production, it could take 10 to 20 years sometimes with the, certain plants. So what everyone has done, Abby, is they're just leaning into all the things that were already commoditized, that were already really available. So what we're seeing is not different plants, but just more of the same commodity plants that have been available on the market. Like if you needed Stella d'Oro daylily or Iris siberica, Caesar's brother, you could get a truckload of about 7 million of them to show up if you needed. Now, if you were trying to find some other stuff that's grown in lesser numbers, here's a good example right now. I was thinking of Symphyotrichum Little Carlo, which is a great, small, more compact aster. Because, now, despite everybody being in the BBLs, sometimes you need a more compact aster. Sometimes you want a big, round, juicy aster, but sometimes you want a more petite aster for certain situations. And that plant, a ghost right now, almost impossible to find. Waka Waka, what's up? How are you? Almost impossible to find plants like that. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but I definitely had felt that we were heading towards commoditization on some of these plants. And then there's going to be some flip incoming. 1, 2, 3. Like these heucherellas. This is Redstone Falls. I knew these would not really be available much moving forward because I knew there weren't a lot of them in production anywhere. I go through availability list. Last year and the year before, I went through availability lists like I had a small addiction to availability list. I'm in recovery now. I knew what was coming this year with plants because of that. And last year I tried to jump ahead of it just a tad, and we did really pretty successfully actually, to have a lot of what we sold last year, but also here at the gardens also. We're able to use it multitasking. Here's the other key to Tiarella. Tiarella blooms early. And these are heucheras that are crossed with Tiarellas. And Abby, the reason this is doing so well, I was able to find, someone was willing to tell me, it's probably the better way to put it, that this Heucherella, which is Redstone Falls, was a cross between Caramel and Tiarella cordifolia. And I knew Tiarella cordifolia does well, and I obviously knew Heuchera villosa Caramel does well. So the second I read that, I was like, sold. Little frost kiss, foliage, little fern in the backy groundies. And then the most exciting thing that only I'm excited about, but you all should be, is this Cypripedium orchid returning. I know, it's just 2 pieces of growth coming out of the ground. Oh, look, hellebore seed. Oh, look at the hellebore seedling. That could have been the new hellebore introduction of Natchez Glen. Oh, wait, there's more. If you ever want hellebores, don't worry. Once you get a few of the right Helleborus hybridotypes, you never don't have hellebores. Look at the epi flowers through the... Maka Waka, are you seeing this? Maka. The most brilliant little flowers. Oh, there were more too. Look at these. Look at y'all hiding. Just chilling out, thinking we're not going to see you in here, doing your beautiful flower things. And let's not pretend that the foliage isn't some kind of sexy. I mean, let's not sleep on the foliage. The foliage? Yeah. Yeah. A little steel bee foliage mixed in there, by the way. Right next to each other, sharing homes. And then there's Redstone Falls with its flowers. I'm going to become a professional gimbler, I think. Is that a job, anybody? Is anybody aware? Is there a job as a professional gimbler? Oh, yeah. Little hellebore in a Heucherella situation. Then above all that, dun, 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 Orange Dream, Acer Palmatum. There's the new growth foliage and the name, Orange Dream. Did well. Normally has gotten its ass kicked by frost 2 of the last 2 years, but last night did pretty well. Those Ethereums, Godzilla doing well in there too. Oh, here's one of the epis really going off. And have you ever grown Bronze Wave, Abby? Bronze Wave has got good color to it. You know, when it comes out, it sort of finishes a little more muddy, right? It starts with a nice reddish color. There's some right over here is why I'm asking. There's Bronze Wave. It eventually does go to more like a green, bronzy tone, but does start with a nice amount of red. Then there's the epis. Just the most brilliant little plants. I mean, them right next to the Heucherella. I mean, that's the best. Oh, that's a good one too then, Abby. Go with that too. That's another one. Definitely do Bronze Wave. If you haven't tried Bronze Wave, Bronze Wave. Those are the only 4 good ones. I'm just going to say it. I'll say it on here. But we're on Twitch now. We're not going to be canceled by Big Flower. Big Flower can't even barely use the internet. Big Flower's got a 56K dial-up modem from 1992. The following are the only heucheras that are any good. Ahem. Heuchera villosa bronze wave. Heuchera villosa autumn bride. Heuchera villosa caramel. Those are the three that are just golden, superstars. Then there's others that, Steel City's good, Color Dream is good, I think Royal Red is going to be good, but, they're good. They're not great. The other three are great. Right setting, right location, they do well. They do well in the upper part of the country, where other heucheras haven't done as well. They do well down here in warmer parts of the country where there was a place that heuchera did well. All the colorful ones we see. It was called Oregon. That's all. It was, if you've ever wondered, like if everybody ever was like, okay, these heuchera don't seem to do well anywhere, but why are there so damn many of them? The answer is because they did well in Oregon. And that's where plants were being grown for production. So everybody was like, these do well. Let's grow those. Made sense. It wasn't a good decision, but it made sense, I guess is where I would land. We're going to go inside and I'm going to sign off here. Really fun doing these together. We've got the studio space is in full effect, and we've also even got, wait for it, some hostas on the floor, protecting them from the potential frost event of yesterday evening. I was, just being a little extra safe. I just was like, it would be a real bummer if we could have brought in that tray of flying dragons and didn't. Let's land on safety in this particular case. Exactly, booty. All righty, gang. So this week, we got a ton of gardening, right? We're knee deep in gardening all week when we can be. We'll keep doing these Twitch streams. So set your notifications, get your follows, tell 4 or 5 of your friends, get on here. Let's raid some people. Let's make some brownies. Let's eat some cookies. Let's do a lot of things this week on here on Twitch. I will also probably make an attempt to set all the gear up one day, and maybe we'll do a day dedicated to indoor plants. That could be a fun thing to do. I actually need to water a lot of things in the studio space, so that might be a cool thing we can do. Set it all up, water them, just talk about indoor plant care. For me, I don't find it really to be that exciting, quite frankly. I think there's like 3 things you need to know about indoor plants. The number 1 thing being no plant is an indoor plant. The number 2 thing being no plant is an indoor plant. They're all outdoor plants, and you're just torturing them by keeping them indoors, but hoping they don't mind it too badly. Eventually, they all do. It's almost inevitable. There is a really great woman who I got to meet. She had a Ficus benjaminiana. It's one of the very tall ficus with small leaves that you'll see sometimes planted. They used to do them in malls. There was a moment they were doing a lot of skylights in malls, and they put a ficus in there. And the ficus would do pretty well. But there's a moment where even the ficus that did well, it did too well for this woman. It had grown to be a 20-foot tall tree. Well, that's a fucking problem now, because her ceiling was 20 feet, and it didn't have nowhere else to go. So even that plant, which she had had, I think she said, for almost 40 years, and it had traveled with her through 2 homes, came to a point where she was either going to need to butcher it hard to cut it back to let it reinvigorate itself with new growth, or it needed to go live in Florida. She eventually landed on, she just actually cut it back, and it didn't look as good, and then she ended up actually getting rid of it. So all these indoor plants are just tolerating this experience. And unless you own like Kew or Longwood Gardens up in Philadelphia, you may eventually run out of ceiling height if you get good at it. So never be stressed by it. That's the biggest takeaway. But we might do that this week. We'll definitely be gardening this week, and we'll be definitely having fun and doing cool shit. We'll talk soon.